B-series motherboards are watered down version of the X-series. This is what I knew until today. This is what happens in a perfectly ordered universe, but something must be broken in the universe because nothing is watered down about the ROG STRIX B550-E gaming. Nothing. We got PCIe 4.0 enabled components, the strongest VRM money can buy, and a premium manufacturer to the fraction of the cost of its X570 counterpart. So what is happening? The entire world is upside down. B550 motherboards are, in many instances, a hybrid, a crossway between PCIe 3.0 and PCIe 4.0 standard. And the real value of these boards is the fact that they can run PCIe 4.0 components without costing the price of an X570 powered motherboard, actually half of its cost. And how did they do it is a question. Well, pure and distilled pragmatical genius. All of the PCIe 4.0 lanes are sourced from the CPU, and the B550 chipset itself is PCIe 3.0 only, meaning that the burden of cost, the burden of price has been shifted towards your processor and not so much onto the motherboard, allowing a much lower price tag. And ASUS used it as a canvas to brush one of the best gamer boards I have seen in years. Now, starting with the obvious. We are dealing with a 6 PCB layered ATX motherboard, and right there, having 6 layers means perfect PCIe 4 support, stronger signal isolation, and a better VRM heat dissipation. But most importantly, it means a more durable product in all and for all. And when you talk about a B-powered motherboard, a budget motherboard, it is luxury, pure and distilled luxury. First, kudos to ASUS for this. It is powered by an AM4 CPU socket supporting both 3rd and 4th generation of Ryzen CPU, and obviously PCIe 4.0 only processors, because this is where some of our most important components on the motherboard will be sourcing their bandwidth PCIe lanes. And that's what's making this product so different, because the processor is the heart of this motherboard, much more than on its previous iteration or even on the X570 powered motherboard. The processor doesn't only give you computing, but also controls all of the bandwidth needs of the most important components in your motherboard. VRM-wise, well, that's a big departure as well. We have the exact same VRM configuration than on its much more expensive X570 version, meaning 16 50 amps power stages organized in 8 parallel phase, or team phase as ASUS calls it, 7 of which are CPU-centric. That's 700 amps of CPU-centric power delivery, obviously more than you'll ever need, not only to run, but to excessively overclock any Ryzen series processor, even a 16 physical core, such as a monstrous 3950X. Cooling wise, we got these 2 tall and thick heatsinks which provide lots of radiating surface, especially this main block, which reminds me a little bit of MSI's extended design, but in better, I have to say. Now, I also want to note the presence of that double contact design ASUS has been pushing forward since its Z490 powered motherboard's release. The big deal here is that both our chokes and power stages have a direct thermopadded contact with our heat shield, meaning that there is no more chokes overheating or heat bleeding towards the power stages overall. And that's such an intuitive evolution of things, because costs absolutely nothing or very little to implement, and it has a definite heat efficiency impact on our VRM operations, especially in the overclocking configuration. So absolutely pure genius, and an extremely big engineering kudos to ASUS for this. Memory-wise, we have 128GB of DDR4 in a dual channel configuration, clocking up to an unprecedented 5.1 GHz with Ryzen Pro Series processors, and that's when you know that ASUS is just showing off, because obviously this is the fastest RAM I've seen on any motherboards. It also obviously means you're gonna have a better compatibility in lower frequencies. So if you have problems reaching those 4 gigahertz or 4.2 gigahertz with this kind of motherboards, it'll be much easier and it'll provide a definite and immediate impact on your day-to-day performances. Gigantic memory, kudos to ASUS for this. Now, staying in the memory, we have two M.2 solid-state drive sticks which can swap data up to a whopping 32 gigabit per second. But because one of them are directly linked to the processor and its PCIe 4 lanes, you will be able to see speeds up to 64 gigabit per second, and therefore this is where I would boot from. In both cases, M.2 solid-state drive sticks get really hot very quickly. Unfortunately, we have those beautifully long and thick and thermo-padded heatsinks, which does a beautiful job at keeping them away from the abominable, horrible, thermo-throttling spaghetti monster. Staying in the storage section, worth mentioning the presence of our usual somewhat obsolete but reliable 6 SATA 3.0 plugs, which can transfer data up to a bottlenecking 6 gigabit per second. And see, I'm trying to behave. I'm trying to be nice. I said it was reliable, okay? Export-wise, we have 5 PCIe exports, 2 bachelors. I like to call them bachelors because they're single speed and single slot, and 3 16 slots with different speeds. As usual, only the closest one to your CPU can run up to 16 PCIe lanes, therefore this is where you'd want your video card installed for optimal performances. In a dual GPU configuration, our slots will be sharing bandwidth with an 8x8 lane configuration, and because both of those PCIe slots are directly linked to our processor, they run in a PCIe 4.0 standard, meaning double the bandwidth. And as usual, I can see you coming and asking, but Laurent, if they run at PCIe 4.0, does it mean my video card will give me better in-game performances? Will it? Current video cards do not yet take full advantage of PCIe 4.0 bandwidth level. They're just not powerful enough just yet. So it's great for future proofing, but you're not gonna find any kind of performances gain inside of your gaming experience, not just yet anyways. Now, back IO wise, first let me note the presence of a rather premium and padded integrated back IO plate, which is again rather a premium move and touch coming from what should be a budget motherboard. Now, starting from the left, we have a CPU flashback button for CPU less, memory less, BIOS recovery or BIOS update. Again, something that we don't see on B series usually. 4 second generation USB plugs, 3 10 gigabit USB plugs including a Type-C, a 2.5 gigabit LAN, which definitely is again luxury in a B series world, and something that I think we're gonna see more and more, or we already are seeing more and more, because it's fully integrated in X570, Z490, more expensive motherboards. Our display outputs for Vega integrated graphics, our dual band 802.11ax Wi-Fi 6 with speeds up to 2.4 gigabit per second, which is now a well-established standard. And finally, we got our 8-channel S1220A audio codec, including an audio Type-C, which is the first time I see it integrated in a motherboard, and which will allow us for better isolated headset sound system and more intelligent one. It will detect what it is right away, and on top of which you can use it for transfer as a USB second generation plug. So I guess somewhat of an improvement. Not sure it's gonna stick out there, worth mentioning. But most importantly, our codec takes full advantage of the 6-layered PCB, because both left and right audio channel are traced on individual PCB sheets, giving that extra isolation which will protect it from static interferences. And add to that the 9 Nikon capacitors, and you have about the best audio experience you can hope from an integrated audio system, both playing or recording. So in general, the back IO is definitely in par with a premium feel of the board altogether. Its performance, its focus. We have less USB plugs, but it does give more room to have upgraded connectivity and a gorgeous sound system. Definitely something I'm happy to see, and a big kudos to ASUS for this. Now, taking a closer look to our chipset, since our CPU takes care of the PCIe 4.0 heavy lifting to fit our most performant components, the chipset can comfortably remain at PCIe 3 standard without slowing down our system. As a direct consequence, our B550 chipset remains at a cool 6 watt, which is fully taken care of by a simple heatsink. Unlike X570 chipset, which goes all the way way up to 11 watt and needs a fan which is obviously more expensive to manufacture. And the result is a cheaper motherboard which can run PCIe 4.0 and, by the way, is more durable as well. There's less moving parts, and that is a balance act well performed if I ever saw one. Mis sombreros. Now moving on to our front panel connectors. We have two second generation plugs, a 5 gigabit third generation plug, and a 10 gigabit Type-C front panel connector, which is a first on Strix B series, which is luxury all around. Cooling wise, we have 6 PWM fans, including a dedicated water pump connector, which is what you'd expect from a friendly gaming slash enthusiast motherboard. You have space for very strong airflow configuration as well as a single custom water cooling system. I do have a small regret not seeing ASUS adopting and going all in on the hybrid connectors, which would have given a bit more enthusiast agility to our board. Troubleshooting wise, we have our easy debugger to guide us through general boot sequences in case of failure, but more importantly, and a first for B series as well, we do have a QLED screen which will really refine our troubleshooting with very precise Q codes, because that's exactly what you would want to see on the PCIe 4.0 enabled motherboard, as well as a high core count VRM. You might be running in unexpected situations, and having that easy debugger plus a Q code is absolutely crucial, and an enormous kudos for ASUS for adding that QLED screen. Finally, this would not be a Strix motherboard without an aggressively carnivorous dose of RGB LEDs and connectors, starting with an RGB strip hidden under our I/O roof, one under our chipset heatsinks, and 4 connectors for our RGB exports, including 2 addressable ones, and worth noting, they've been paired in opposite section of the board for easier access. In short, if you ever find yourself on Mars, in a cave, during a Martian sandstorm and wanted to communicate your exact positioning back to Earth, well, son, you're in a cave on Mars and you're with a motherboard. In conclusion, at $280 before taxes, the ROG STRIX B550-E gaming is a revolution on its own merit. It marks a strong departure from, watered down B-powered motherboard to real, fully featured products. And plainly stated, technologically wise, the market can now deliver real budget alternatives. It's a class of its own. I love the fact that it's hybrid in a sense, that it really relies more on the processors and on the chipset and shifts this whole financial burden on something you already paid for, the processor, and relieve you from any kind of issue and moving parts and heat problems with the motherboard. I think that AMD, maybe inadvertently, to be honest, leaped forward compared to its competition. And to the credit of ASUS, it really took the opportunity to produce one of the best gaming motherboard you will find at that price. It has the entire ROG range of features, including QLED screens or even a front panel Type-C, the most powerful VRM I have seen on B chipset powered motherboard, and in many instances, one of the most powerful available on X series even, and the absolute robust and durable manufacture design of a 6-layered PCB, all of which at a fraction of the cost of the ROG STRIX X570E gaming. I mean, this board is what we've been needing in the industry for the past couple of years, a real exciting evolution. And if you are a gamer today, looking for what the markets can best bring you at the best possible budget, well, the ROG STRIX B550-E gaming is without the shadow of a doubt where your money screams to be, because it's even better, in my opinion, than X570 powered motherboards or even the latest Z490 Intel motherboard by a mile. There, I've said it.